Lula Martha Alwina Vogel Evans. That was my grandmother's name. My grandmother passed away a couple of years ago, but she left quite a mark on my life, just as most of us have grandmothers that have left a mark on our lives. One of the marks that she left on me is that when I was about 16 years old, she branded me with a title. She said that I had wanderlust. And she was right. Wanderlust, the way she defined it, is that I would travel anywhere. I mean, you give me a stamp on my passport, you give me a chance to get on an airplane, you give me a chance to go, and I'm there. So several years ago, I guess it's almost 11 years ago, when Barry Lane over at Brookwood Church asked me to go to India with the team, I said, okay, Barry, here's the deal. See, my first answer is to say, yes, absolutely, I am there. Let's go. When are we leaving? But I need to pray because I'm not sure that my motivations are right. Is it really because Jesus wants me to go? Or is it because I just like to go? I like to travel. I want the adventure. Barry said to me, Amy, I do want you to pray, but have you ever considered that God wired you this way? That God created you this way? There are lots of people that don't want to leave Burlington, North Carolina, and they sure don't want to go to India. Maybe God wired you to say yes so that you'll go, that you'll be ready to go for Him. Well, God did open the door for me to go on that trip, and I was excited. One of my friends that was going to go on the trip, she was scared. I just couldn't understand that. I really just couldn't understand that. I was just ready to go. We watched videos. I read books about India, about Mother Teresa and her work there, about all kinds of things. I was just saturating myself, ready to go on this great adventure. Well, then we arrived in India. We had been given lots of lectures about how we needed to be very careful because, see, we weren't there officially as missionaries. We were there as tourists. If we said too much going through customs, then we could be put back on the plane and turned right back around to go to the United States. That's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario was that I would expose these missionaries and they and their work for Jesus would get kicked out of Calcutta. Now, no pressure, right? No pressure. So we had been on this flight for, I don't know, countless hours. I couldn't even remember having left North Carolina at that point. We got into the Calcutta airport about 2 o'clock in the morning, totally exhausted. The rest of the team went right on through customs, and little Amy went through, I'm sure, looking so nervous. I'm told everything shows on my face. So I'm sure that I had plastered all over my face. Please don't ask me questions. I'm a missionary, you know. And sure enough, the guy that I got with in customs decided that he would grill me. By the time that I got through customs, I was white and shaking because he couldn't understand why anybody would come for fun to Calcutta for 2 weeks. And to tell you the truth, after I had been there for a while, I understood that line of questioning. It's not a vacation spot that most people choose. We got outside, and Barry Lane had warned us about the beggars there. He said, there will be beggars there. And I thought, well, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, surely not, but there were. There were not only beggars, but women with children on their hips, pressing in, doing this, and trying to get you to give some money. And beyond that, there were people who hung out outside of the airport. They wanted to carry your bags. Barry had explained to us, they're not attacking you. They're not trying to take anything. They want to carry your bags so that you'll pay them. Just hang on to your bags real close and keep walking. Well, see, in America, we have this thing called a space bubble. We have some personal space. In a city like Calcutta, 13 million people, not so much. And so there were all these people after going through customs and getting really shaken up there, and then we go through this just barrage of people who are all in my space. By the time I got on the van, I was a mess. All of a sudden, my friend who had been afraid, she seemed like the one who had a lick of sense. And me, who had thought this was an adventure, well, I was just deceived. So we drive through Calcutta, 2 o'clock in the morning. There were people everywhere. People sleeping on the sidewalks, policemen patrolling with machine guns on their backs, packs of wild dogs that just run through the streets. They all have these curly tails. And cows, as you know, everywhere. I started looking around, and the city looked like a war zone, an absolute war zone. The buildings looked like they had been shelled. I found out later they weren't shelled, they were actually under construction. But sometimes in India, construction takes so long that the building's actually old before it's finished. And in the midst of all this, I look up and I see this bulletin board or this billboard. And it says, Calcutta, City of Joy. Really? Seriously? That's the nickname for Calcutta. But y'all, the truth is, I don't know if you know the root of the word Calcutta is Kali. Kali is the goddess of death and destruction. She is the goddess that the city has been named after. To me, that looked like the more appropriate name. City of Joy, not so much. And what I realized, I had this flash of realization about how I had gone into Calcutta with this little attitude. See, when I moved to Holly Springs from Burlington, some of you will not be surprised at all that the girl who can talk to a brick wall, that my job there in Burlington for 6 years was the welcome wagon lady. So I would go knock on doors of perfect strangers, take a little basket of goodies and sit and talk. My joke with my friends was, I'm paid to be perky. And that little attitude, my personality, somehow in the back of my mind, I had believed that I was going to walk into Calcutta and change, if not the world, at least that city of 13 million people with my sunshiny personality. And I realized this is not a job for Little Miss Sunshine. This is a God-sized job. If this billboard up there is ever to be true, if that's, maybe it's a prophecy of God. How did they ever get that city of joy amongst all this death and illness and poverty that has come from serving that goddess all these years? That maybe that's a prophecy of God. But you know what? If it's a prophecy, it's a God-sized job. Because joy is not going to come to Calcutta without Jesus. But you know what? That's true of my life too. Joy is a choice to make every single day. And how many times have those of us in this room that we've faced adversity with just kind of like a self-help book, or maybe, hopefully, at least with us Christian girls, a Bible study, in one hand, and this kind of can-do attitude, our Miss Sunshine attitude in the other hand, and we kind of start looking for joy. And we look for joy amongst our circumstances because every day we have joy killers all around us. There are the negative, critical people around us, not to mention the voice in our heads. There are circumstances beyond our control, and there are circumstances that we're in that we have caused purely by our own decisions and actions that steal and sap our joy. I remember years ago, maybe some of you remember too, when we still lived in Burlington, there was a March for Jesus. Did anybody go to the March for Jesus? Years ago. And the idea was they would get all the denominations, all the church together, people who loved Jesus, and we would simply march down, I think it was down Front Street and into downtown Burlington to just to show Burlington that we love Jesus. And we were supposed to buy a T-shirt. So the T-shirt that I bought for my then little itty-bitty Anson, who is now taller than his daddy, he's about 6'4" now, But I bought this little tiny t-shirt that says, "Choose Joy" on it. And I've come to believe that that is true, that every day, that joy is a gift from God, but we have to choose to open it every single day. It is a daily choice. If you have your Bibles, will you turn with me to Nehemiah? It's back before Psalms, even so it sounds like one of those minor prophets that would be back behind Psalms. It's before it. Do you remember when you were a little child and you sang that song about the joy of the Lord is my strength? Do y'all remember it? I was going to sing it, but I'm going to spare you the singing. The joy of the Lord is my strength. That's such an encouraging verse. It's such an amazing verse. It's a verse that we use usually all by itself. So when I started thinking about speaking about joy, I thought that was the verse that popped in my head, those little children's songs that you get in Vacation Bible School, and they really never go away. They become part of your psyche. And so I thought, I need to find that verse and find out where that was. Well, I wasn't expecting to find it where it was, right there in Nehemiah. I thought, well, surely it'll be in the Psalms or Proverbs or someplace uplifting and encouraging like that. But there's this little book of Nehemiah. Now, I want to give you a little lead up to this. We're all familiar with the Israelites, and some of the stories that we're probably the most familiar with are the ones about the Exodus, about Israel being set free by God out of Egypt and out of slavery to go to the promised land and all their adventures in between. And so we read those and we talk about those. And it's funny because my children, we read through the Old Testament last year chronologically with them. And it's funny, it really revealed how little we teach our children about the Old Testament. That so much of the stories in Sunday school are the same stories over and over again. And so we kind of stop, when they get those grapes. They finally get to the grapes, and we know that they made the wrong decision first and went back out in the desert for 40 years, and they came and they went into the promised land.